Yeah.
Hi, Monica.
Hello.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Same.
I'm so glad you are joining us for our Tiny Bits of Love series. When I created this series, I'd been talking to a really good friend of mine here in Oregon, and she was like, we need to talk about dehumanization and spirituality and religion, because I'm a Christian witch. So I'm always talking about witchcraft and Christianity. And I'm Southern Paiute. And I'm Celtic. And so like I bring all that into my work. And she's like, you need to invite guests on who are like they're like you, Missy. And I'm like, I know exactly who I'm going to interview. I'm going to DM Monika Crowfoot on TikTok and see if she answers me. And you did. And so I want everyone to know that the reason you're even here with me today is because I was on TikTok and you were talking about the Mormon church. And I grew up in Utah, born and raised. And you were talking about the Mormon church and their persecution and murder of Indigenous people. And I was like, oh, thank you. What? Like I tingled. Like I was like, yes. So I'm so happy you're here today. I'm just honored, and I can't wait to talk to you about all these things. So will you do me a favor and introduce yourself and tell people who you are and where you're from and what you do?
Absolutely. Yat a she Monika Crowfoot, Yanishia, Hashkan Hidzohe, Nishle, Torich Eatni, Bushes Chin, Tohedlini, Deshache, Bibitorni Deshanilla. My name is Monika Crowfoot. I am Navajo. I was raised on the Navajo reservation in Arizona. And although I grew up on the reservation, I felt separated from, my community, my traditional community, because we were Mormon. I was raised Mormon. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the short introduction.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into the questions, I'm wondering, why did you decide to take to TikTok to start having this conversation?
That's a good question. I don't know. So I had a dear friend who is also on TikTok, and she was just making these amazing videos, and I am a very introverted person. But I am also a very creative person. So I don't mind, like, doing these little clips and things, talking just to a camera is something that is less scary than talking to actual people sometimes. Unless you have that connection right away. You know what? Like, I need to have that connection of, I'm not a small talker. So, and I get a lot of anxiety a lot of times. So she's like, come on TikTok, you would be great. And I was like, I don't know, like but then it was COVID and I had nothing else to do. And I swore to myself I wouldn't be on TikTok because I was already wasting so much time. I was already super addicted to my phone. So it was just another thing to add,
Sure. Yeah.
But I didn't realize the amount of deep content there was there. And the communities that were there really felt healing to me. Connecting to other Indigenous creators, connecting to other people who were going through faith transitions, and just like fun stuff that I needed. I needed a lighthearted pick me up, especially during COVID, raising kids in a pandemic. And, I mean, the stress really gets to you. And so I just found I really loved it there on TikTok. And it was just easy to, make a 15-second video.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that you just said about making spiritual transitions is such a huge, there's so much complexity when it comes to spirituality and religion. Like, we left the church, the Mormon church, early on. My father committed suicide. The bishop decided it was the wrong way to die. My mom went into chaos, right? We went from Relief Society to like off the deep end kind of a thing. And I always hated religion, but my dad is Southern Paiute. And so we were also effectively cut off from that ancestry, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my adulthood that I was able to pursue it. And it was because my cousin, Stephen, who lives on the Navajo Nation, he and I connected in our adulthood so I could start piecing things together, right? But the idea of taking this platform that's just like 15 seconds of whatever, right? To connect us in all these multiple, it's like a web, right? Like, it's like the best weaving ever of all these multiple places of connection spiritually, right? Like, it's almost, I mean, it's so random that you get connected to these people with similar backgrounds as you, right?
Yes.
And yet it's not, like, because of the algorithm or whatever. But
Yeah.
I was wondering what you think about, I'm going to skip around some of these questions, but when you think about spirituality and spiritual connection, you know, especially because of how we were raised, and what do you think happens when we deny our spiritual connection because of the harm that the LDS Church causes for many of us?
So, there's a huge contrast between how I viewed spirituality when I was younger and how I view spirituality now.
Yes.
Spirituality, I mixed that up a lot with being religious, being obedient, following somebody's, commandments and what they tell me is right. And spirituality now as an adult, I feel like there's so much more freedom. Like, I am finally realizing who I am, and as Mormons, they give the line, there's always the missionary lines of, do you want to know why you're on earth? Do you want to know what your purpose is? Come to our church. And I thought I knew back then. But after the death of my brother, he was 14, I was 15, and kind of processing that as an adult, there were so many conditions put upon whether or not I would get to see him, again.
Yes.
And you had to be worthy. You had to be following all the commandments. Families are forever if you do this.
Yes.
If you're in our church, if you're paying tithing, all of these ifs, and I honestly, having children of my own and parenting these little ones, I couldn't imagine Creator putting conditions on us like that.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, love should be the priority above all. Yeah. It shouldn't be what kind of underwear you're wearing or if you're drinking coffee or not,
Yeah.
I mean, those are really just silly things. But when we're in it, when we're in the religion, we think, well, we're told, if you can't follow this simple thing, how are you going to follow all the big things? Rules? Yeah, the big things.
Yes.
But the big thing is love. The big thing is loving somebody else. The big thing is accepting somebody else. And that has nothing to do with following these trivial rules, control tactics,
Yeah. What you are saying resonates so much with me, because, and so many of my friends, because, that's exactly what happened when my dad died. Like, you're not going to ever see him again.
Yeah.
And I would have, and my dad would come to me, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I saw my dad all the time.
Yeah. You're like, no, you're wrong.
Right. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what? I mean, he was just here with me last week, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
always just standing right here, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, of course I'm going to see him again, because he comes all the time, and I'm 6. So what do I know, right? Like, of course
Yeah.
I am, because he hangs out with me all the time anyway. And it was so traumatizing for our family that, and I think what's so important that you're talking about is the minimization of grief when we need connection to community and to spirit the most.
Mhm.
Is it's so eye-opening, especially when we're young.
Yeah.
And that is the process that we go through, to be like, oh wow, I really love what you said about confusing spirituality with religion. It's such a big thing, because you're right. It's all about love, like creator, that God, universe, spirit, whatever it is that you call it. Like, it's about love
Yeah.
and connecting through love.
It's connection.
And we are all worthy of that, by the way. It doesn't matter what we do or who we are or how we act out in the world. We are all worthy about that love and connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that this question, what is the pain that grew you the most, came about because I was having a conversation with my friend Stephanie Zong, and we were talking about that pain is often an opening. Grief is often an opening to something. Would you say that it's your brother's death that grew you the most, or do you have another example of something that's just opened you wide to loving more?
I think that was definitely the catalyst. Because, it happened at such a vulnerable time. I was still a child, but I'm still like, teenage years are just so confusing, anyhow.
Yeah.
And so it really made me question a lot of things. It made me question whether God existed or not, because I was really angry, because everybody said, well, God took your brother so you could come back to church. And I was like, well, then I really hate him right now, because like that was not the thing to do. Because our family was going through a really tough time at that time. Our family was not doing well. There was a lot of turmoil, and I feel like a lot of it had to do with religion and like just fanaticism. And as I write about my childhood, and as I write about the morphing of our young family, when me and my brother were born, and how my parents interacted, and then as it grew and expanded, and as they actually did leave the church for a little bit, because of George Lee. He was one of the general authorities for the LDS Church, the first Native American general authority. So it was a big deal that he got excommunicated.
Yep.
And that's when my parents left the church, but jumped back into another cultish like belief, of, well, the Mormons aren't really translating all of this, like, or like interpreting this correctly, so let's have our own little group. And I remember I wasn't part of it. We were just kids, and I was like 12 or 13 at the time. But it was mostly the adults. But I remember it caused a lot of turmoil, because my parents weren't on the same page. And George was asking the men to divorce their wives as a sacrifice to God. And so, you get these like crazy ideas in your head about sacrifice, and creator wants this and creator wants that. And, just to take. And so when my brother did die, that's when we came back to church. And that's when everybody said, well, your brother died so you could come back to the true gospel. So, and you have to come back to the true gospel so you can see him again, so your family can be together forever, and to get you back on the straight and narrow path. And it was just very manipulative language.
Yeah.
I felt like they had taken him hostage,
Mhm.
and that all these conditions were set.
Mhm.
And what if I didn't get to see my brother again? So I think that was a huge catalyst, because I was very angry at the time,
Oh yeah.
of course, and
Yeah.
angry at my parents, and my parents were having their own issues with each other. And I felt like, as the eldest daughter,
Yeah.
you get heaped up with all of their drama.
Your responsibility to
Yes. And then you
yeah.
have to take care of all your younger siblings.
Yeah.
And it just was like a really stressful time.
Yeah.
And so just started questioning everything. But at the same time, I was like, no, I can't question, because then I
Yeah.
won't get to see my brother. What if this is true? And like, I won't get to see my brother. So, you kind of double down into it again.
So what was the thing that made you realize that it was all that you like, that you would see your brother again? What I mean, like, what is the thing that pulled you out of that dehumanization? Because one of the things I've been talking about is like, we dehumanize others to justify our shitty behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we do. We dehumanize homeless people. We dehumanize indigenous people, Native American people all the time, right? Like, we are constantly dehumanizing. They're all alcoholics. They're like all of the mythology around
Yeah.
Native people. Like, so you were dehumanized by that predominant religion. So what was that thing that helped you catalyze out of that into healing so that you have your voice the way it is today?
I think when my son was born,
Mm.
when he was born, I saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just so mind blowing that I was like, I don't know, it really messed with my head. And I have to also remember to be very careful not to put that kind of pressure on my son.
Yeah, sure,
But,
of course. Yeah.
But like, his mannerisms would be the same. And like, some of the same things my brother would say to me,
Yeah.
he would say. And he was like 3 or 4 at the time, my little boy. And my mom would even see it. She's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Aaron would do.
Wow.
So I knew that he had come back to me in a like, in a way, like,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that brought me comfort. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm still here,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that was the beginning of not really believing all of the conditions,
Mm-hmm.
set by the Mormon church.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not in charge. They don't have a monopoly on spirits.
Yeah.
And who
does?
who can visit me and who can't.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And so, and that was also the same thing. I mean, and a couple, like, exactly 10 years later, on the day my brother died, my daughter was born.
Mm.
My second baby. And so, there's all these little just magical occurrences.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, like, my husband had questions very early on. Like, he served a mission. We got married in the temple. I mean, we did all of the things, and he had a very similar background to me. He's Blackfoot, Oneida, Akwesasne, Mohawk. And we grew up very similarly, with very similar generational traumas that we had to bear.
Yeah.
But he questioned the religion very early on. And because my parents had left the church, and because my brother had died, I was deathly afraid that I was like, no, we can't leave the church and we can't question, because if we leave the church, one of our kids is going to die.
Right.
It was like this irrational thought.
Yeah.
But it's also encouraged by the members and by the leaders that, like, well, if you're not going to humble yourself, you're going to be compelled to be humbled. And you don't want to do that because that's something serious. And so that was always the thing that we were told. Like, my dad thought, and this was just so sad to watch, that he thought that he was being compelled to be humbled by losing his son. And so I know he carries a lot of guilt in that. And that just breaks my heart that he would think that that was his fault, even though it was a complete accident. And things just look so different as an adult. You start thinking rationally, and the end of the world didn't happen in the year 2000. So, this rapture said it was going to happen this year. And
no,
it happened. So, so then start thinking more logically.
Right. So now that you've had all of these experiences, and here we are, wherever we're at with this pandemic, there's wars starting again, like all of these things are happening. I'm curious, what are you holding space for, and how are you creating spiritual expansion in the midst of all the things that are going on right now?
So I'm holding space for grace, grace for myself, and grace for, those around me. I feel like I've come a long way in my maturity. You always think you're not judgmental when you're in the church, and you're like, oh, we don't judge, but you totally do. And I found that I need to give myself grace for a lot of my own mistakes. In writing about my childhood, I realized that I had wronged a lot of my siblings. I wasn't there for them like I should have been there for them. But I also realized that we were all grieving in different ways.
Yeah.
So we, and you don't know how to like properly or adequately do that at 15 years old.
Oh.
Especially without any kind of therapy. And we all should have gone to therapy, and we didn't, because we thought we'll just pray it away. If we pray and give our tithing, then we'll be fine. But
how grief works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You realize that you need outside help sometimes. But so I think grace for myself, grace for others. I'm really trying to listen more and understand, offer that same grace to my children, the grace that I wasn't given as a child, so they have a safe space to grow up in, and a safe space to make mistakes in, even.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think people can be changed by engaging with love and grace?
I don't know. I for myself, I feel like my heart has definitely been softened, but also strengthened. Like, I'm not willing to put up with bullshit anymore either. I am totally willing to give out that love, but I'm not going to put up with any kind of abuse. Yeah. I'm just, nope, life is too short. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tolerate being mistreated, or, just, or putting up with toxic behaviors, or, just things like that, because there are a lot of toxic behaviors that come with, being in high demand religions like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't have a very good relationship with my parents right now. Since August, we've been trying to reconnect to our culture, Navajo traditional culture, and my parents were not happy with that.
Yeah.
And so we got into a little bit of a tiff, but I don't feel like, I can love them, but I don't feel like I have to bend over backwards and say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, because that's what they're waiting for.
Well,
Well,
and that's grace, right? Like that's true grace, Monika. Like if you can be like, I am not going to sacrifice my own truth
mhm.
to make other people happy.
Yeah.
That is true grace. I got covered in the children. Like, and I really love that you brought up reconnecting to your traditional Navajo traditions, because I'm in the process of doing a Truth and Reconciliation series. I'm Episcopal now. I walked into the church and started crying. I didn't stop crying for like 3 months. I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I don't understand. This is so confusing.
Yeah.
But we're doing a racial justice, truth and reconciliation series for like 5 weeks. And we've talked about the doctrine of discovery and manifest destiny. And we had a representative from a local tribe here come in and talk to them about the real history of the area, not the whitewashed history of the area. And one of the things that is really complicated, I think, for people to understand is what happens when there is such backlash on all sides when we try and reconnect to our traditions as Indigenous people.
Yeah.
We get it from white people and we get it from other Indigenous people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is quite an emotional experience. And this actually leads into this idea of ancestral healing. So we talk so much about ancestral trauma, right? But I've been thinking a lot about what it would mean if we really listened to Mother Earth. And this all came about because I was preaching a sermon and I happened to get the part of the Bible where it talks about Jesus turning water into wine.
Yeah.
But let's talk about alchemy and magic for just a minute, shall we? Hashtag witchcraft. So anyway, the thing about that part of the Bible that I never noticed before was that his mother, good old Mary, is like sitting there going, come on, buddy, you can do it. Show them what you're made of. Like, we need you to turn that water into wine. And Jesus is like, no, thank you. Like, it so reminded me of my little boy. I was just like, oh my God. Like, and then I started thinking about Mother Earth. And it took me down this path because I love thinking about how we are part of nature, right? As humans, we're not meant to be perfect. Which is a lot of that grace and healing and love, right? We are not meant to be perfect because we are just like the trees and the birds and the waterfalls and the rivers. You would not look at things that happen naturally in nature and say, oh, I love how you're that babbling brook, but could you babble better? Yeah, would not do that, right? And I'm getting to the question. Hold on. So
fine.
So I was thinking about, okay, what happens if we listen to our mother? Because I love Mary. She's so awesome. And then what would happen if we listened to Mother Earth more? Like really, truly listen to her and just paid attention. And then I was thinking about ancestral trauma. And what would happen if we started talking about ancestral thriving? Not survival, not trauma, but pure, unadulterated thriving. Because that is what you and I are moving towards in our lives with that grace and that love. So what do you think would happen if we all started to listen to Mother Earth and how our ancestors don't just want us to survive, but they want us to thrive?
So this reminds me of the ceremony that we just did in August for my daughter. It was a Kinalda ceremony, a puberty ceremony. And, my parents had refused to come, which was just kind of devastating all around. But my dad's cousin and my mom's cousin, they both came and attended.
Oh, wow.
Every night. And they just, passed on this wisdom to my daughter
Mhm.
and this love to my daughter.
Mhm.
They were like the surrogate grandparents there.
Mm.
And I mean, when you hear them call your daughter my baby
Oh.
in Navajo, like just
Oh.
like, you know, it just like touched my soul.
Yes.
And I was like, this is what life is all about, is
Yeah.
like, and I don't see my auntie very often,
Mhm.
you know. But every once in a while she's been there, and especially being in Canada, I hadn't seen her for a while. So um she knew about my parents not wanting to be there, and she said, Shiyaja, it's okay. Like,
Mhm.
I felt in my heart I had to be here because your grandmother couldn't be here. My grandmother is in the nursing homes now with
Mhm.
dementia.
Oh gosh.
And my grandmother really wanted my mom to have a puberty ceremony, but my mom was like, no, that's disgusting. Being a woman is disgusting.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality I grew up with,
Yeah.
being
Totally.
ashamed to be a woman.
Yep.
And I thought, I don't want this for my daughters.
Yeah.
And so I loved that the medicine man and that just everybody there was celebrating her womanhood, and that she wasn't ashamed of it.
Isn't that
She
incredible?
wasn't hiding. Yeah. And she, like, all of these people, all of my cousins and my family members that I haven't seen for ages, gathered round us and filled us up with their love. And I feel like that is ancestral thriving. The old
Yes.
ones coming to like lift you up,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if like, even when they know your own parents aren't there, they come in and step in and say, hey, we're here for you.
Yeah.
And I loved my aunties coming, and like they butchered a sheep, and it was so funny because like my aunties, they're my dad's younger sisters,
Mhm.
and they're like, we got after your dad and said he should be here. And as the child, I can't do that. That's
No.
not my place. But I love that my aunties were like,
Mhm.
chastising their brother
Yeah.
for me, so, for their niece.
Yeah.
But like these relatives came from like Colorado. They came from, just far places to be with us and camp out with us with no electricity, no running water.
Yeah.
They helped us prepare the food. They gave my daughter gifts, and it was just a beautiful ceremony. Like, it was a lot of hard work, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
But them just taking the time to teach me
Yeah. It's huge.
meant a lot.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful because, I realized Stephen and I just saw each other, my brother, cousin, Stephen and I just saw each other. People don't get it. Like, he's
Yeah, no, absolutely.
my
Brother,
brother,
cousin, brother,
right?
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we came together for the first time since 2008, I think. And then I only saw him for a brief moment. And we were both in very different spaces back then than we're in now. And we met together in southern Utah on our ancestral homeland. And we went out to Toro Wheat, and we went out to Mount Trumbull, and we went on pilgrimage together to reconnect to the land together. And while his partner was with us, and so we just left them with the kids, right? We left Jim and the kid, my husband and the kids, and Sherwin, and Stephen and I went off a couple times, and then Sherwin went with us a couple times too to do medicine and stuff. But we're sitting there, and we're just all sitting around the camp spot, right? And Sherwin's teaching Sean how to make fry bread, my little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Sean's like, and he's barbecuing ribs, and we're doing all this stuff. And Sean's like, this is amazing, Mom. How come you don't know how to do these things? I was like, it's the simple weaving of that fabric of what it means to
Yeah.
reconnect to your family
Yes.
in a really traditional, it makes me cry, in
Yeah.
a really traditional way that truly people do not understand
Mhm.
what that means.
No.
To
Yeah.
be taught the things that we crave as women, as healers, as, dare I say, prophets and sages and magicians and witches. We are embodying that spirit as we're teaching ourselves what we have lost. It's so beautiful, Monika. And I'm so grateful to you for speaking out and doing the work that you're doing in the world, because it just inspires me. It inspires other people. And I just really want to tell you how beautiful I think it is that you are continuing to speak out. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to be with me. So
Thank you.
really appreciate you being here.
It's
So
such an
grateful.
honor to finally meet you. And
I
thank
hope we get to stay friends. I'll come visit in
Yes.
Florida, and you can come visit in Oregon, and we'll hang out.
Yes. Absolutely. I would love that.
Yay. If people want to follow you on the magical TikTok, what is your handle?
Monika Crowfoot.
Love it.
Monika with a K.
Monika with a K.
Yeah.
Hang tight with me for just a minute. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us either live or in this recording. I'm super grateful for all of you. I have a new series of masterclass videos up about Maiden Mother Crone, unfucking the patriarchy in your brain, and other feminist magicalnesses. So head on over to my website at naturalbornrebel.com and sign up for my newsletter, and you can get those amazing videos. Monika, thank you so much again for being with me today. Have a beautiful weekend.